So I would like to welcome everybody here. So today the Upland Chamber, because of the month of May and just being aware of things that are going on in our community and our business community, we thought that we would do a meeting, and I reached out to Dr. Doug over at Samaritan Counseling Center, which is a great source if anybody needed to use a counseling service. So highly recommend Dr. Doug. But today, Dr. Doug and his team are going to be doing resilience amidst COVID-19, healthy coping and caring. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Doug, and you'll go ahead and get started in introducing your team that's here with us today.
And one of the things I'll do is Dr. Carlyn has the slides. So if she would like to pull up those.
You should be able to share the screen.
Okay, great, thank you. Looks like I haven't been able to share yet because I'm not the host.
So while they're doing that, I've invited one of my clinical staff, Dr. Carlyn Wenderman, to also present some of the information today, especially on how we can apply this to kids. I wanted to make sure we really tune into resilience and how we can apply it to all of us. And we do get a lot of questions about kids, and so I want to make sure that is addressed specifically. So welcome, Dr. Doug McKown, Samaritan Counseling Center, as you heard. On the next slide, if there's questions that come up, send them in the chat feature to everyone. Dr. Carlyn will be looking at those. I won't be specifically looking at the chat, so it's best to send them to everyone or to Dr. Carlyn, and we'll address those questions at the end of the presentation. I did receive some questions from Terry last night, so I've tried to incorporate that in the presentation, and some of them I will address at the end of the presentation. I just want to make sure we have enough time to do additional questions, so we'll squeeze those in. All right. I would be remiss if I didn't say something about Samaritan Counseling Center. So we've been around as an accredited nonprofit agency serving Upland and surrounding community for over 47 years. And I have a fantastic staff of master and doctoral level caring therapists. And they have a variety of specialties, working with children, working with families, anxiety, depression. We have a program that works with families that have children with developmental disabilities. So my staff have specialties in those various areas. We focus on working on looking at the whole person and addressing whole person treatment, mental, emotional, relational, and spiritual health. So we're not just looking at a problem, we're looking at the whole person and what resources they have. We take a strengths-based approach. And services are available to all. We were thankful to be awarded the Upland Chamber Nonprofit of the Year Award. Yay! Cool. So that is awesome.
It's getting so long, it's getting in my food. So
sounds like some folks are not muted.
Am I muted?
That's important to note is our clients typically report over 90% increase in healthy behavior, functioning, well-being, parenting ability. Those are some of the metrics that we examine. Next slide. I touched on this already, but we serve a variety of issues, anything from anxiety, depression, abuse, prevention, recovery, a variety of mental health issues. One big area is relationship challenges, whether it's child-parent or between a couple, family issues. So we deal with those on a regular basis. And some people just want to individually want to improve their life. They want to, there's goals that they want to achieve, and we help them address issues that can free up their ability to thrive in life. So I mentioned our BEAMS program, which provides in-home, typically in-home, behavior intervention services and parent training for children with developmental challenges. Right now, all of our services are being provided via phone or telehealth video conferencing. So, next slide. So May is Mental Health Month. The stats, if you just look at the stats of the prevalence of mental illness in America, 20%, 1 in 5 adults have some type of mental illness. Now, the majority of these individuals struggle with some type of anxiety or depressive disorder. So if you think about the people in our sphere of influence, there's a very, very high probability that one, if not yourself, one of your friends or many of your friends are struggling with some type of mental health issue. So it's a common thing. You are not alone is the point. You're far more likely to have some type of mental health issue than COVID-19. So keep that in mind. You can see the other stats there. Let's move forward. So in regards to COVID-19 and mental health, I think a huge issue that we've all experienced is increased stress and loss. And there's different types of and sources of stress and loss. And I've put a bunch there on the slide. The loss of routine, the social distancing, not gathering at churches and gyms and biking group and family and community gatherings. The discomfort around others has more to do with, we have these masks, we have to keep 6 foot apart. I mean, look at the lines at the stores. We have the queue where you're funneled through this wide maze at Costco. I've never seen such. It's like worse than Disneyland. Big issue here is the loss or feared loss of job, of health insurance that could be associated with job, or just health in general. Those are real issues that we have to that people are impacted by in a significant way. We've all gone through the process of delayed reopening date. We get our hopes up and then things get delayed. And thankfully things are opening back up, but it comes in fits and starts, and there's all kinds of challenges that we have to address in reopening certain businesses that are high risk. As we know, a lot of life events have been canceled or rescheduled. A lot of chamber events have been canceled or rescheduled. We've got graduations, birthdays, weddings, anniversaries, baby showers, vacations. I was supposed to be gone on our largest vacation ever to get away, and all of that was canceled. We've been dealing with challenging home environments, especially if there's a dysfunction in the home or individuals that are struggling with some type of substance abuse. We worked with children that have been abused and neglected, and the incidence there, as I'll mention later, is concerning, because if you're confined to that small space, imagine the issues that can bubble up. Just taking everyday well-functioning individuals and putting these constraints can bring us to our wits' end. It's a big stressor. So if you're feeling, tired, worn out, stressed, that is all normal in the situation. Favorite restaurants closed, financial insecurity. A big thing I keep on hearing is assuming multiple roles. Gosh, I got to be. In fact, one of the questions that we receive says, how do I manage my job, home life, childcare, tutoring without feeling overwhelmed? That is a biggie. And so employing the things that we're talking about today will definitely help with that. Research supports it in a significant way. It's already noted on there, assuming multiple roles. We just talked about that, remote learning. This is all new. This is all new to everyone. So it's a stressor anytime you go through and do new things. One big area that that we struggle with as humans is uncertainty. When we are uncertain as to the future, we are uncomfortable with that. When there's a void, when there's something that we can't control, we typically, that's a struggle for us. And we don't know the timeline. We don't know if this virus is going to have a big resurgence. We don't know when, if the event, is the event going to be canceled or is it going to go on? We were just talking with Terry about the Tour de Foothills. I look forward to that every year. Is that going to be able to move forward as planned, or are there all going to be all kinds of other constraints? So these are things that are, the uncertainty, the unknown is a big deal. As I mentioned, or I alluded to, anxiety, depression, grief, and risk of domestic violence, child abuse, and suicide have all reportedly increased. We have to take these mental health issues very seriously. Next slide. So along that line, it is okay to not be okay. One of the things I did was I went back and through the last couple of months or so, I've seen a variety of memes on Facebook, and you know, that's been a welcome relief to have some humor in the midst of all this, of the pandemic. So some of these things are noteworthy, and toss them into the presentation. So taking care of your mental health is more important than ever. One thing, if we can focus in on this, is we cannot control this pandemic, but we can control how we respond to the challenges that we face. So in line with that, we can employ coping skills that build resilience. And so we're going to be talking about that. I am bullish on the future, and I believe that we have the potential not to just survive, but to thrive and come out stronger through this process. And I believe that as individuals, for us as individuals, as families, and as a community. So we can more than just survive, we can thrive, we can come out stronger. We're learning things through this process. And I believe that we will best be able to do that if we employ the resilient skills that we're going to be talking about, and if we do this together, if we don't split, get into contentious arguments, but if we can figure out a way to come together, we will be stronger as a community and a nation. Next slide. So, simple definition of resiliency: ability to recover from or adjust to adversity, change. I can talk more about that, but let's get into how can you build resiliency. And I've noted there are six coping skills, six things, behaviors that strengthen resiliency, that help grow resiliency. I could have put 5, I could put 7, but let's go with these 6. These are supported by research. That's important to know. So what are they? Following a routine, prioritizing wellness and self-care, having a purpose, connecting with your social support network, healthy thinking and hope, and compassion. I would say compassion for self and others. So let's jump into the first one. Following a routine. The meme on the right provides a nice, that's a simple routine. Wake, be awesome. Some of this, because we've made it through the initial crisis, most of us are in some type of routine now. We have anchors in our day. We've created a daily schedule. We as humans do best. Our brains need structure. Our brains need a structure and routine in order to function well, in order to function at our best. So having that daily schedule, focusing on what's necessary and building from there. Basic things like sleep, meal times. One thing that can be affected, for example, is gosh, I used to go to the gym, X number of days a week. Now the gym's closed, and I don't see any of them opening anytime soon or whatnot. Well, there's a variety of things that we can do to replace that. So we keep the same routine. We have to alter how we go about it, though. One of the things I note on there, tag team, especially folks that have kids, young kids, and they're trying to, they've been trying to do distance learning. Now we have, okay, all the summer programs, are those going to be canceled, or are they going to be modified? What are we going to do? People are working from home for the first time. Many people are working from home for the first time, and simultaneously trying to homeschool their children. So although things are starting to open up, we still are having to do those balanced routines, and that can be a challenge. I'm going to move it along and Carlyn, Dr. Carlyn has some thoughts on applications specifically for children.
So just like what Doug was saying is routine is helpful for all of us, right? It helps gives us structure and expectations for our day. But especially with kids, part of our responsibility as parents is to help teach kids how to organize themselves, right? And a routine is an excellent way in order to develop that, especially with younger kids when they don't even know what time is. They don't understand it. It's a construct. So by establishing and implementing a routine, it helps children feel safe enough to explore the world around them. I'm waking up in the morning. I know I'm going to get breakfast, right? Which means we have to be able to provide for our children's needs, to provide for food, for example. After breakfast, I'm going to do my chores, and then I'm going to have school time or homework, whatever that may be. And it gives them a structure to look forward to, and allows them to have the expectations for what they can experience during their day. And by knowing what they can expect, it actually helps develop a sense of their self-control, right? If they wake up in the morning and they say, I want to play, if they know that they'll play after they complete, chores and schoolwork, then they have something to look forward to, and they'll be able to regulate themselves a little bit because they know that it will come after other things get accomplished. And so by developing that self-control and those expectations, it also helps our children learn healthy habits, as well as a sense of autonomy and dependence while doing some of these activities, right? If you have a young child and they're learning how to paint responsibly for the first time, or cut and paste something, right? When they're learning those skills earlier on, as a parent, you have to kind of oversee that, make sure they're, not putting paint everywhere, making sure they're not cutting themselves or eating the glue. And as they can demonstrate responsibility and safety with that, then they could just do it on their own, and you don't have to be there to supervise them for every single bit of that activity. And that helps you as a parent to decrease your own stress, because it allows you to do some of your own other things, like take a shower or go to the restroom or prepare food. And so it really just helps show that the more routinized, or the more that you can have a routine for yourself and teach that for your kids so that they can internalize it and take it on, it will ultimately help with your stress, not just during this time, but for the rest of your life.
So prioritizing self-care and wellness, this is a big deal, and I want to emphasize this includes physical, mental, emotional, spiritual well-being. One thing that I love to emphasize with my clients and when I speak with others is cardiovascular exercise. One of the questions I'm going to comment a little bit more in depth later about, it had to do with my sleep. My sleep's been off. What can I do? Well, cardiovascular exercise is well-researched, solid way of helping with sleep. If we do regular cardio throughout the day, that helps with sleep. And cardiovascular exercise helps the body flush out the toxic chemicals that have built up due to stress. As we go through life, in any given situation, if we are experiencing as a stressor, chemicals are released in our bodies. As that builds up, that is not healthy for us. And so we have to find ways of dealing with that. Cardio exercise is one way of dealing with that. Mindfulness is another. So other areas of self-care, wellness, obviously I already mentioned it, regular sleep patterns, eating nutritious foods. A big one, especially early on, where we've probably gotten into more of a routine, is limiting the news and media exposure. there's so much negative stuff, and it's such a focused window of things. What do I mean? What do I mean by that? It's focusing on the, sometimes the salacious, sometimes the worst case scenarios, and it's sometimes we have to step back from that and see the bigger picture. That's a big deal, especially, and I'm going to have Dr. Carlyn comment on this, but especially kids' exposure to that, because they're just sponges. They are simply sponges, and they're going to soak it all in. Spend time with family. This has been a great time to spend additional time with family. So this picture right here, when I think of pictures of resilience, it brought me to tears. This is, couple of 2 months ago, a month and a half ago, whenever, when I see internationally people who don't have a backyard, who don't have anything but maybe a balcony and sometimes only a window, but they would get together and they would. This is across different resilience areas. It combines both community, connecting with others, as well as wellness and health. That brought me to tears when I'm seeing that, because as a human race, it's like, oh my gosh, these people are part of the solution. It really, really jazzes me. And this is just one example of so many people who are demonstrating and helping others build resilience. So another resilience engendering behavior is to really think about one's purpose. So if we think about what gives us meaning, what is our purpose? As soon as the regulations came down for stay at home or safer at home or whatnot, all these things that we can't do, one of my first questions is, okay, what can we do? What can we do? If we just focus on what we can't do, that will bring us down. But if we can focus on what we can do and be realistic with that, then it gives us, it helps. One of the things it does is helps give us hope. If we can help ourselves deal with what is rather than what if, that's another construct. I will touch on it more in terms of how we think. How we think will affect how we perceive things. So one area is, if we start, well, what if this happens, and what if this happens, and what, then I can help an individual just by, if they focus on the anxiety, on all these concerning what ifs, they can ratchet up their anxiety in a big way, and all those toxic chemicals in the body are building up, and that's not doing them any good. So focusing on what we can do, focusing on what is rather than the feared things. And one of the things that's been helpful for my life and many people that I've worked with is the serenity prayer. So God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. That wisdom in knowing what we can do, what we can control, and versus what we can't control, and looking at life that way can make a profound difference. So there's a variety of things that we can do, and we've seen it all in the positive things in the media. We've seen it. We can help out. We can volunteer. We can connect with others. There's a slide. A few nights ago, my wife and I, we love watching The Voice, and I got really excited when I saw Alexa Capelli, because we watched The Voice a couple years back, and she's from Upland, and we saw her compete, and we were rooting for her. And then when we saw the season finale of The Voice recently, they featured a variety of these singers and what they're currently doing. And it brought me to tears again. Here's a person who is sharing her gifts with her neighbors, with the community. She's doing it, here's the picture. She's doing it in a socially, in a distance way. People are safe, and yet she is helping others, supporting others. It helps her with purpose, but it also is a blessing to so many others around her. And that just really jazzes me, because she's being part of the solution. This is something that chamber members usually do really well, is connect with others. And I would say connect with others and support others. So how do we, how we do that can make a big difference in people's lives. We've been living this. We know that social distance does not mean social isolation. And we're doing this right now. We're using technology to connect as a community. And this is, see, I like to look at the silver lining of things, and this is a silver lining. We can connect with people that otherwise maybe couldn't get out and interact. We can do this through video technology. Loneliness is damaging. If you look at the research on loneliness, it is destructive to a person's health. So if you see friends, if you see people, if you see employees that are isolating, that are showing signs of loneliness, help and connect them in some fashion and support others. This is an important time. There's people that are feeling lonely, and you might not even realize it. So reach out. On the slide there, it says, do something to help others or help them feel loved. Again, I've seen so many pictures of people reaching out and connecting and still being safe. We have to take seriously how virulent this virus is, and yet it doesn't mean that we disconnect from folks. And this is a beautiful expression of it. I'm sure you've seen pictures of people putting their hands on a window and that way looking at each other's face and touching, and yet staying distant and protecting their health. Beautiful expressions of this. There's another one. Life continues on. Babies are being born even amidst COVID-19. It's not like we put a pause on life. And we want to reach out, we want to connect and do it so in a safe way. And here's a beautiful expression of that. Next slide. And Carlyn, Dr. Carlyn has, sorry, I shouldn't move on next slide yet. Dr. Carlyn has a brief comment on kids and connecting.
So just to piggyback on what Dr. Doug was saying, during this time, summer is starting, right? Schools are starting to end. I know some of my clients are already on summer vacation, and as the world starts to open up and we become more socially and physically engaged again, it's still important to remind our children how to maintain that social connection while still maintaining social distance, even when they're able to be physically present with other people. I think something that's really important to keep in mind is that just because the restrictions are starting to become lifted doesn't mean that COVID is gone by any means, right? And I know personally I've been seeing people interacting with others as if it is gone. I was like, it's not, it's still here. We still have to be safe. We still have to take our precautions. And part of what we can do as parents or caregivers or adult family members is teaching our children how to maintain safety while socially engaging at a distance, while still being with other people, right? There's so many levels to this kind of engagement. So helping them, choose activities that they can do outdoors, for example, right? Being outdoors and being out in the air is a lower risk activity to do with your friends. Finding other ways to physically connect with your friends, right? Hugging or high-fiving, it's still a little discouraged right now. So maybe we can do foot fives or elbows or something where we can still find a way to physically engage just at a different level. And just reminding our kids, continue to take the appropriate disinfecting precautions, or wash your hands, use your hand sanitizer, whatever you need to do, and just helping them learn how to balance so that they can be connected to other people. Especially since, you know, with summer vacation, there's a lot of things that are being lost, like maybe maybe some summer school or summer vacation time, summer camps. And so what can they do during the summer to connect with other people other than just through the internet? So this is something I'm encouraging all of you to keep in mind.
You know, one of the silver linings I hope that comes out of this whole pandemic is I think kids will learn universal precautions and better hand washing. So I might be wishful thinking, but I believe strongly that this will have impacted kids in a significant way, and they'll know how to wash their hands a lot better now. Healthy thinking and hope. I can't emphasize it enough that your thoughts affect your feelings and resiliency. Your thoughts play a large part in how you feel and how resilient you are in the midst of adversity. You know, when we work with clients, there's a lot of things that we do to help identify and challenge irrational thoughts. And when I say irrational, I mean, we all have irrational thoughts. We all have things that can trip us up. So anxiety and stress tends to magnify those. And so if that's occurring, we shouldn't be surprised. That's fairly normal, but what we do about it can make all the difference in the world. As you see on the slide, one of the things we need to watch out for is should thinking, you know, gosh, I should do this, I should do this, I should. You know, this whole transition can be draining on us, and so we need to be mindful that maybe we can't do everything that we're used to doing. You keep on hearing me say this, hopefully, is look for the silver lining. Research is clear. We are happier if we look for the good. And so one of the ways that we can do that is look for the silver lining. I want to emphasize that, remember that your self-talk influences your perception. So what you focus in on, what you really are tuning into makes a big difference. Faith practices can be helpful and provide stability in the midst of a storm or this crisis. One thing that can be really useful in challenging and helping our thoughts in terms of resilience is reflect on a past situation that you've been through, a past seemingly impossible challenge that you did overcome. Things that you have overcome, challenges that you've overcome in life can be a pivotal thing to look back on and help give you hope and strength in the current situation that you can make it through this as well. That's something that we can employ as a resilience engendering behavior. I've already mentioned this, but what we say to ourselves determines our perspective. So an example, I can remember, this is a number of years ago, I was mountain biking with a friend up in the Angeles forest in the mountains. And this guy was a great mountain biker, clearly skilled, and we're going through on the edge of this cliff, and I pause at one of the overlooks, switchbacks, and I was like going, isn't this amazing? This is gorgeous. It's just spectacular, invigorating. And he turned and looked at me, and he said, "This is terrifying." And so, there was probably I don't know, 600, 800 foot drop there along the path that we're following. And yes, if one focuses on that can be terrifying, but you could choose to focus on, gosh, this is beautiful. Choose to focus on, I know I am fully capable of mountain biking this area. I'm operating within my limits. So that's just one simple example. in the moment, how that can make the difference between something that is hugely anxiety provoking or just exhilarating. And I believe Dr. Carlyn has some quick comments on kids.
And just as a reminder, the way that we think, that will also be the way that our children will think too. So if we're constantly, as Dave said in the chat, shooting on ourselves, right? Thinking about all the things that we should be doing, or all the what ifs that, the what ifs of the implications of COVID, just, physically, socially, etc. Those would be the thoughts and the concerns that our children will adapt and adopt as well. And so, we all have the right to have our feelings, right? We all have the right to feel scared, but making sure that we're being very cautious on how we think and how we also help our children think too. Because if we're scared, you bet your butt that our children will be just as scared, if not more, because they don't understand what all of this means. So just be very, very cautious. Be cautious on how you think, making sure that you're sticking to the facts and being very realistic with your concerns, especially as you're processing through some things. And if you do want to process through things with your social support network or with your spouse, or whoever is currently living with you during this time, make sure that you do it away from your children, because although you think that they're not physically there, they will hear you.
And as a reminder, children are sponges. They absorb what is in their environment. So I will probably repeat that numerous times. Compassion. And I want to emphasize compassion with self and others. Interestingly, when we practice compassion, it boosts the immune system. It reduces anxiety and opens our hearts to helping others. One area of compassion, for example, is managing expectations. One of the things that reminds us is that I do not need to do everything myself. I tend to be driven. I can tackle. I can do it myself. And I went through shoulder surgery a while back, and my arm was attached to my body, and I couldn't use it at all. And just basic things that I'm used to doing, I could not do. Looks like there we go. I had to manage my expectations of what I could and could not do, because it was really difficult. I had to ask for help. So sometimes being compassionate is, managing expectation and also asking for help. Mindfulness, this is a whole topic in and of itself. I'll just make a quick comment. Take note of your emotions, what your pain, identify what you're feeling and where you feel it in your body. Being mindful of the here and now, the present, and what you're thinking and how your thinking affects your physical condition. That's a whole practice in and of itself. Common humanity. Something that I've mentioned to others, I hear it myself, is we're all in this together. We literally, for the first time in our lifetime, we're all in this together. This pandemic is in the entire world. And that helps us to reorient our brain sometimes. It's not like this is all on me. No, this is hitting the entire world. Conversely, if we start splitting and attacking our fellow human, then it reduces our ability to respond in a healthy way, and then we can't mobilize our resources as well. And I'm going to make a comment about civility. I had a question that came in. Why is there so much attacking on Facebook, or media, social media in general? Civility is lacking. If you recall, early on in this process, there was there's never the total connectedness and, hey, we're all in this together, but there was more of that. The challenge is when we feel as humans out of control, or we feel like our freedom or our life, our liberty, our livelihood is being threatened, we don't tend to respond very well. And we can lash out at others that even if in a slight way they are making comments that could somehow infringe on our freedoms and our livelihood, or make comments about that. If we can get back to civility, compassion for ourselves and others, that will help us in our resiliency as well as our fellow humans. Self-kindness, that kind of do what you can. The bottom phrase, you can only do what you can with the resources you have at the level that you are capable. And with that, I'm going to have Dr. Carlyn comment a little bit more on some areas that are specific with children that we maybe haven't touched on yet.
So as a reminder, right, as parents, as adults, we're role models for our children and for the generation to come. And so what we do and how we cope with this time, how we manage our stress, anxiety, anger, whatever feelings come up, whatever challenges we face, what we do will help model what our children can do and what they'll learn. And so that's really important to keep in mind overall with implementing all of the areas that we've been discussing so far. But it's not just doing that as well. It's how do we actually talk to our children? How do we actually talk to our teens about what's happening and help them figure out how they can also develop their own coping and resilience as well. So first and foremost, what's important to keep in mind is making sure that we're talking to our children at age and developmentally appropriate levels. We want to make sure that we're talking to our children at a level that they'll understand. You know, not just the topics, but their feelings or how to cope with those feelings, the specific challenges that they have. You want to factor in their age and their cognitive capacity. So for example, how, you know, you may talk to a 15-year-old without any intellectual disability challenges is going to be different than if you're talking to a 15-year-old who has a severe intellectual disability and they can barely get out of bed or they can barely talk. So you have to factor in those developmental stages and challenges as well. We want to make sure that we're encouraging our children to process their feelings. What do they feel? Why do they feel that? What questions do they have? Why do they have those questions? What's inspiring them to have those questions in the first place? And to help manage their anxiety, you want to make sure that we're reassuring their safety as well, right? If you walk out the door, it's likely that you're not going to die, right? But that may be a fear that a child, especially a young child, may have if they're internalizing some of those messages that they've been hearing. But you say, you know, if you leave the home, take certain precautions and your risk will be lowered, right? That's a more realistic sticking to the facts of what it will mean to go back out into the world. We talked about it before, and I'll say it again, making sure that you're limiting their media exposure, not just how much media exposure, but the type of media exposure and what's actually being communicated, whether it's through the news junket themselves, through politicians, through you know, the CDC, whatever that may be. You want to make sure that you're being very cautious on how you expose them to that media information. And again, you want to help them identify what they can control. None of us can control the fact that this is happening right now, but we can do our best to control our level of safety to the best of our ability.
I'm going to make some quick comments on helping our employees. There we go. And you can see it on the slide. Communicate and reassure safety precautions. There's even little programs for that in the county of San Bernardino. In terms of symptoms, look for red flags and warning sign symptoms. We could do a whole brief presentation on that alone, but look for some isolating behaviors, look for things that could spell that they're struggling. One thing I want to emphasize is there's various levels, varying levels of fear of returning back to work. While you know, the research is clear in terms of purpose and working, having meaningful, purposeful work is actually a great way to improve mental health and resilience. However, the fear of returning back to work can vary depending on the individual. So how do you balance those? There are some individuals that maybe have their parent at home and they are in one of the high risk categories. And so they're fearful of returning to work and yet going back home and somehow infecting their loved one. So that has to be taken seriously. Getting to know our employees and the concerns therein can be very useful and help address that. If we really listen to the concerns of our employees and then address them in a meaningful way, that can go a long ways. It's noted on here, remind employees of mental health resources that are available to them. And if your company has an EAP program, obviously fast track employees that are manifesting severe symptoms. A comment I want to make is don't let these resiliency engendering behaviors fall by the wayside. Pick one, pick two, but act on them. It makes a difference. So make a decision right now to act on these and increase resilience. There's an unmuted child back there somehow. I'm going to shift to questions that I've received, jumping right into that. Please send in your questions that you have now, but I'm going to immediately go into questions that have already been sent to me. Here's one for fun. Quarantine quick question. Today, our governor announced that we can now go to barbershops and hair salons. As a bald man, this does me no good. Can I, and parenthetically, and all of the other bald men of California, exchange the hair appointment for a day at Disneyland? To me, this seems fair. Plus, it would be uniquely fascinating to see Disneyland filled with nothing but bald men. You know, I'm not sure how to answer this question. I love it. There's, I even saw, you know, someone will definitely respond by going, "Oh heck, if that's the case, I'll shave off my hair and be able to go to Disneyland." On a more serious note, here's a couple more questions. Are my kids safe to go back to elementary school? How do I handle this constant worry? How do we put family members at ease that it's okay to venture out? And what cautions or cautious recommendations would you suggest to relay back to them? Here's the reality. We need to take seriously everyone's felt level of safety while simultaneously holding on to the fact that life has inherent risks. You walk out the door, you drive your car, you ride your bike, things like that. There are always inherent risks. And so just as a construct, because I can't answer the question for a specific person because it depends on some of their health factors. Look at the stats, look at the folks that are most severely affected according to the CDC. They're individuals with secondary health issues. Those, we have to be very, very careful with individuals that are older with secondary health issues. Those are just the facts. Bottom line is we all need to weigh out the risks of the behavior we engage in with the felt rewards or benefits. My wife and I love to road bike and mountain bike. It gives us life and it builds connections with others, and it's awesome for our exercise. And it has also led to more physical damage, broken bones, than anything else that we have done. And yet we would not trade it for a thing. We go back to it. It's life-giving. Another question that I just got is, well, this stress from work, I feel like I'm overworked. How to reduce stress overall for myself and my family? How do I manage my job, home life, childcare, tutor? Those are things that we addressed in the presentation. Some other questions. How do I convince my young adult it is okay to look for work? How do I keep my kids motivated and stay off the screen? I would say these are actually more perennial questions. Probably, maybe they're exacerbated by COVID-19, but these are questions that span the dawn of time. So what I would be curious about is what enlivens them. What strengths do they have? I would take a strengths-based approach. So where do they want to head in life? Sorry about that. Taking a strengths-based approach and incorporating motivational interviewing and going from where their energy might be. And Carlyn, Dr. Carlyn, if you could take over for 1 second.
Hi there. Yeah, so it's all about taking those precautions, right? Just like what Dr. McKown was saying, we all need to work, and especially for adults, and if we're trying to be autonomous people, we have to find that balance of mitigating our fears and doing what we need to do and be involved within the workplace. You know, helping children, helping our kids or our young adults or our teenagers figure out, okay, well, if you have these fears, what can you do to challenge those fears and not just reinforce them by, you know, finding things you can do at home where you don't have to be around anyone ever, right? Because that's not realistic. And, you know, although there are some positions, most of the positions and jobs out there right now that are available for lower level employees, you can't really do that. So what can you do? Take those precautions. Remind them that companies are doing their part to ensure safety precautions, and even if companies aren't doing their part, what can they do about it? Who can they talk to? Who can they ensure that those supports are being implemented and followed consistently? Or we always want to remember with ourselves and with our children and our teenagers and young adults to always validate, normalize the concerns, and then say, now what can you do about it? Or what can you do rather than just staying afraid? So really helping them challenge that and identify that they can do that for themselves, I think is really important.
Thank you. And reducing screen time, one of the things you could quickly do, and this is very effective with kids, is pairing a more preferred activity with a less preferred activity. So if they really want to have that screen time, they can address this, you know, whether it's school or some type of chore, do that, and then they can engage in that screen time. Another question I got was, I have difficulty sleeping. Any suggestions? So first, as I mentioned earlier, normal to have a disruption in crisis or in challenging times. I already mentioned cardio, emphasize cardio. Definitely avoid naps. Keep the sleep-wake cycle. It helps with our circadian rhythms. And addressing anxious thoughts during the day as opposed to letting them build up and then you're trying to go to sleep and then the anxiety just kind of creeps up. There's other techniques, but for the sake of time, I'm gonna leave it at that. On any of these things, if you see a family member, yourself or whatnot, and it's building to a level of where it's affecting your ability to function in life, definitely see a therapist sooner than later. That is one thing I will briefly mention. Any other questions that we've gotten? Dr. Carlyn or Terry or otherwise?
We don't have any questions in the chat, but this is your opportunity to ask any follow-up or lingering questions before we start wrapping up.
Good.
Yeah, so somebody asked how much cardio per day. So generally a minimum of 30 hours, or 30, well, not 30 hours, 30 minutes of cardio, active sustained cardio, not, but you know, an hour is usually better. But 30 minutes at a minimum, especially during this time, it's doable, right? Even if you're just walking up and down your stairs, you can do that for 30 minutes, taking a walk around the block. You know, it's a benefit that we don't have to worry about. I don't have time to go to the gym. Well, your gym is in your home now. You can do a 20-minute, you know, something on YouTube. There are things out there and there are resources available to you.
There's tons of free exercise workouts online, and they don't require, well, some of them require weights and dumbbells and whatnot. You know, there's plenty that you just use body weight, and so you can get a good workout and never leave your house. So I mountain and road bike, and I've been doing that throughout this time period. Take necessary precautions. There are some risks, of course. The chances of me getting injured riding my bike are much greater than getting COVID-19. So you got to weigh the risks and benefits.
Mhm. An additional question was, what foods to avoid or to focus on, right? So I would, similar to the sleep and motivation question, that's also a perennial question, but reminding ourselves that, we have to have what's healthy for our body. So generally it's staying away from candy or from a lot of fast food, although we want to maybe support our local restaurants, we shouldn't always be doing takeout because it's expensive and it's not always the healthiest food. So making sure that we are having, vegetables, protein, anything that's in accordance with our specific lifestyle restrictions or preferences that we need to have, any medical considerations, all that would be the typical but various responses.
Avoid sugars.
Avoid sugar.
Inflammatory response.
Try not to go through your entire wine cabinet during this time. Best source for unbiased news, unbiased news channels, etc. Stay informed without causing anxiety. I think something that we've been really cautious of, at least with Samaritan Counseling Center, is sticking to the facts, right? Hearing things from the CDC, from the National Alliance of Mental Illness, right? Sticking to the corporations who are responsible for researching and distributing the information first, rather than going straight to the news or media sites where they have their own interpretation, right? So you want to go to the professionals and listen to what the professionals are telling you first.
There's lots of talking heads out there. Given the time, I want to, I've had some clinical staff jump on, and I want to do a shout out to Nicole and Karen and Chris. And a big thank you, I hope I didn't miss anyone, a big thank you to Dr. Carlyn. Oh, I had Heather there. Big thank you to Dr. Carlyn for, I sprung this on her, and we've been working together. Oh, is Jennifer somewhere on there? I think she's already gone. So thanks, guys.
Thank you. Thank you, Samaritan Counseling Center. Great presentation.
Thanks for the opportunity. Any way we can help people, we want to be part of the solution. So